And in 6 days, Israel quadrupled in size. And most importantly, for the purpose of Jewish identity, and I'm focusing on Jewish identity right now, Michal, it got Jerusalem.
Well, I think the 6-Day War is seen by historians as a moment in which American Jewry really felt like this existential angst for Israel.
Okay.
And many historians say that you have this renewal of Jewish pride and identity after the 6-Day War, because it's like little Israel is able to stand up against all of these armies and prevail.
Yeah. Hey everyone, welcome to Wondering Jews with Mijal and Noam.
I'm Mijal.
And I'm Noam, and this podcast is our way of trying to figure out the Jewish world. We don't have it all figured out, but we are going to try to figure it out together. And I'm so happy that I get to figure it out together with Mijal.
I like your excitement, Noam. I feel like you're more excited than usual. Just kidding. We love hearing from you listeners. Keep the feedback coming. Please email us at wonderingjews@jewishnpack.com and call us, leave a message at 1-833-WON-JUICE. And Noam, we're going to start with a listener question. So this week's question is from Alex. And Alex wants to know, what are you most looking forward to this summer?
I'll tell you, Alex, it's such an easy answer. I am looking forward to my children not having homework. That's it.
Oh.
It's clutter. It's irritating. It causes fights. It's too much. It's too much.
It's so funny.
Enough.
Yeah.
Let's end homework. Michal, can we just end homework together?
I tried voting for that with the parents of my kids' school. It didn't work so well. So what am I looking forward to? I'm still figuring out my summer, so it's a little bit unclear, but I really hope to make it to Israel. Like, just my heart is constantly there. Like, that's the first thing I think about, the last thing I think about. So now, speaking of Israel, this episode is coming out on like an interesting / weird / I don't know, whatever, Jewish holiday. And I am calling it weird because Yom Yerushalayim, Jerusalem Day, I think it's a holiday that means a lot of things to a small group of people. Like, it's not the kind of holiday that is celebrated broadly, like Passover or Purim, or even like Israel's Independence Day or Memorial Day, Yom HaZikaron, Yom HaTzmaut. So let's just start by naming, what is Yom Yerushalayim? What is being celebrated by whom? So I'm just going to put you on the hot seat now and ask you to tell us a little bit about Yom Yerushalayim.
Listen, the thing about Yom Yerushalayim is, you said it means a lot of things to a small amount of people.
Yeah.
That's such a great way to put it. I uncontrollably laughed as you said that, because I was like, yeah, that's it. That is a great description of Yom Yerushalayim, of Jerusalem Day. We did a 3-part podcast on unpacking Israeli history about Jerusalem Day and about the 1967 war. So, if you want to listen to that full articulation of it, go there. I'm going to try to give as quick an articulation of what happened in 3 or so minutes. The 28th day of ER is the day that we celebrate Jerusalem Day. Like you said, by a small group of people who identify as religious Zionists most often are the ones that are celebrating this day of Jerusalem Day. Religious Zionists meaning a subsection of Zionists. So now we just played a game where it's not just Zionists, it's people who identify as either traditional Zionists or traditional or religious. And that means that people who identify as either ultra-Orthodox or totally secular won't find the same meaning very often in Jerusalem Day.
So if you're a Zionist but not religious, or if you're religious but not as much of a Zionist, this won't be the holiday for you, basically.
It's not the holiday. Now, that doesn't mean that residents, citizens of Jerusalem, and people that identify as secular out in Tel Aviv or Haifa, they might love Jerusalem Day as well. But it doesn't come close to the seriousness of Memorial Day, of Yom HaZikaron, or the celebratory national experience of Independence Day. It really is a subset of people, religious Zionists. It's actually the ultimate, I would say, religious Zionist holiday. And therefore, for me, as someone who identifies as both someone who is proudly Zionist and aspirationally religious,
I want to unpack that now. I'm proudly Zionist, aspirationally religious. Okay.
It's a really important day for me. And it's a day that, and I'll start by saying this, that I say the full Thanksgiving prayer to God with a blessing, which means that on this day, which is a day which in Judaism, we don't do that often. You don't add new prayers. You don't add new holidays. But it's a day that I view this as a day of intervention, that there was a moment that we should be grateful to something, to somebody, to some being, to some moment that allowed for this day to take place, in which Israel, the Jewish people, regained the city of Jerusalem, which it did not win in 1948. And for many people, in 1948, when Israel's independence was declared, and then the war was fought between Israel and Jordan and Iraq and Syria and Lebanon and Egypt, well, Israel won that war and was able to gain 78% of the land of Israel west of the Jordan River. The remaining 22% or so, well, there was the West Bank, and there was Jerusalem, and there was Hebron, and all these ancient Jewish cities, which were not in the hands of the Jewish people. So people like Rabbi Tzvi Yehuda Kook who was a leading religious Zionist figure, was so distraught in 1948. He actually wasn't feeling this joy that other people felt when Israel finally declared a Jewish state.
So 48, independence, we just celebrated that a couple of weeks ago or so, that we have Jewish sovereignty. But that Jewish sovereignty doesn't extend to many sites that have particular sacred and holy resonance for Jews across generations. And those were controlled by other countries, actually, like Jordan, who had control over those territories.
Exactly. And in the Independence Day of 1967, meaning the way the Hebrew calendar and the Gregorian calendar fall out, it's interesting. Every 19 years, you know about this thing? Every 19 years, the Hebrew date and the Gregorian date fall out on the exact same day.
Yeah.
So it's so interesting about 67. 19 years after 48 was 67, and the Gregorian date that was celebrating Israel's independence, they fell on the same day as Israel's Independence Day in Hebrew, which is the 5th of Iyar. And so they fell together on the same exact day. And every Independence Day in Israel, what they did is they would do a big parade. And this year, in 1967, before June, remember the Six-Day War doesn't start until June of 67. So in May of 67, Israel is celebrating its Independence Day, and they used to choose a city. They would choose a city to have this big march, this big parade. And in 67, the city that they chose was Jerusalem.
So we're talking right now about Jerusalem, which is divided. So the old part, which is the one with the most religious significance, that has Temple Mount, that is controlled by the Jordanians.
Yes.
But like the newer part that doesn't have as much of the religious significance, that has Israeli sovereignty. So Jerusalem is literally divided. And you're describing to us a moment of that time before Jerusalem is reunited. Exactly.
So we're now in May of 67, a few weeks before the war takes place. And on this very day, if you can imagine it, Rabbi Tzvi Yehuda Kook is giving this intense lecture at the yeshiva that his father, Rabbi Avraham Kook, had created, called Merkaz Harav. And he describes 1948. And he said, when the entire people went out to celebrate in public, I couldn't go out and share in the joy. I sat alone. I couldn't come to terms with what happened, with this awful news, as he describes it. I succumbed to this feeling of shock, my body torn to shreds. I had nothing to celebrate. Where is our Hebron? Have we forgotten her? Where is our Shechem, meaning Nablus? Our Jericho? Where? They divided my land. They divided the land of God. I couldn't go outside to dance and rejoice. The true Israel is Israel redeemed, the kingdom of Israel and the armies of Israel, a people in its wholeness and not in a diaspora in exile.
Yeah.
And that was the feeling that Rabbi Kook was speaking about 3 weeks before the Six-Day War.
So I want us to react to this statement that you just read, which is fascinating. But before we do that, let's just quickly do the historical trajectory of what happened. So give us on 1 foot, describe to us the Six-Day War, kind of how it begins and what happens vis-a-vis Jerusalem.
So this is the dramatic moment. So imagine you're at the march. It's at this parade is taking place. And Levi Eshkol is the prime minister, and Yitzhak Rabin is the chief of staff. And Yitzhak Rabin is handed a note at this parade. And the note said the following: the Egyptians have moved their troops to the Sinai. And this moment started to be called in Hebrew the Hamtana, the waiting period. And Egypt and Syria and Saudi Arabia and Iraq and Jordan, they're all moving their troops to the borders. At this exact time, all of this is taking place. The Straits of Tiran are then closed. And so Israel is now totally isolated from the world. And then while all is taking place, the founder of the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization, Ahmed Shukari, says, listen, in the event of a conflagration, meaning if there's something bad takes place, no Jews whatsoever will survive. And this is all happening in May of 1967. And people like Abraham Joshua Heschel, the great philosopher, the great rabbi, he starts asking questions like, will there be another Auschwitz, another Dachau, another Treblinka? This was the feeling that was on people's minds at this time.
Right. And I just want to note part of what's crazy, I'm just listening to this like post-October 7th, 2024. It's such a different landscape. This is Israel being attacked by its Arab neighbors, by other nation states, which I think is very different than what we've gone to today, in which Israel is attacked by terrorist groups that arguably are part of like the same axis of terror that Iran is, controlling from far away. But there's something really, there's a story here that we should keep our ears open to as well. This is how many armies attacked Israel at once?
No army had attacked Israel at this point, to be clear. And
how many armies does Israel think we're going to attack it at once?
Egypt, Syria, the Saudis, Iraq, and Jordan.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So Noam, keep going.
Okay. So I'm imagining that moment of Rabin getting that note saying, Habibi, bro, Achi, like chill out with your parade right now. Some things are going down. May 28th, at the end of May, Levi Eshkol gets on radio and gives what's called the stammering speech, in which he's not clear with his words. He doesn't know what he's saying, and everyone's nervous, and he just does nothing to bring calm to the atmosphere. And he just increased anxiety. Eventually, Israel just establishes what's called a unity government. This unity government brought Menachem Begin into the government. Menachem Begin was always in the opposition, and he became this minister without portfolio. Moshe Dayan becomes the defense minister. Levi Eshkol is still the prime minister, and Israel does something amazing, which is in one fell swoop, they take out the Egyptian Air Force.
Wow.
They take out the Egyptian Air Force, and it is so clear very quickly that Israel's going to win this war. And at this point in time, Jerusalem's still irrelevant. Jerusalem was not controlled by Egypt.
Right.
And in the north was Syria. And Israel, Levi Eshkol says to King Hussein, the head of Jordan, please stay out of this. Stay out of it. And Hussein feels like, nah, bro, I can't do that because I am deeply connected to the Pan-Arabism, and I cannot allow for me to depart from Egypt or from Syria. I'm entering the fight. Jordan enters the fight. Huge mistake.
For Jordan,
exactly. Israel defeats Jordan. Listen, there was a cost. I think around 180 Israelis were killed fighting for Jerusalem, and in total, over 700 Israelis were killed in fighting the Six-Day War. But that's nothing compared to what they were estimating or thinking would happen. And in 6 days, Israel quadrupled in size, and most importantly, for the purpose of Jewish identity, and I'm focusing on Jewish identity right now, Michal, it got Jerusalem. Well,
I think the Six-Day War is seen by historians as a moment in which American Jewry really felt like this existential angst for Israel. And many historians say that you have this renewal of Jewish pride and identity after the Six-Day War, because it's like little Israel is able to stand up against all of these armies and prevail.
Yeah.
But I want to actually also go back to what you were just saying right now. I'm thinking on the spot. So, tell me if you disagree. No,
okay.
It sounds like part of what happens here with suddenly getting all of these territories, right, that Israel has, is that on the one hand, you have some people in Israel who are like, ooh, we have some territories that we might be able to exchange to resolve the conflict that we have with our neighbors. Okay. And on the other hand, you have some people like Rav Tzvi Yehuda Kook and others who are like, oh, this is bringing us closer to redemption, in which we have religious sovereignty over the entire land. And that's like a little bit hard to like reconcile when you have people who are almost like celebrating and happy over the same thing, but actually seeing the meaning of it and almost like the end result in different ways. How does that sound?
I think that's a very good description. I think it's a very astute observation. And to further complicate that, which is just ironic to think back at this historically. The head of the NRP, which was the National Religious Party of Israel, was a man by the name of Moshe Shapira. Now, if you were to say, hey, what do you think religious Zionists think about the conquering of Jerusalem, of having Jerusalem? It was he who was arguing that Israel shouldn't try to conquer Jerusalem. Because at that point in time, the national religious parties were the most dovish. They were the people that were most moderate. Rabbi Tzvi Yehuda Kook was actually on the outskirts in many ways. And it was only after the 67 war did this messianic religious Zionism really catch hold on the community.
Yossi Klein Levi has a beautiful book called like Dreamers, in which he kind of tells the story of Israel through the story of some soldiers who fought in the Six-Day War, Tzanchanim, paratroopers, and eventually their life journeys and what they represent about Israeli society. And one of those paths is the creation of this religious Zionist movement that ends up playing a really significant role politically in Israel and in terms of how Israel's developed.
So this is where the story gets complicated, because so far I've just said a rosy story, a story of glory, a story of 2,000 years of yearning for something and getting it. That's like a really romantic story, right? But there's, like with every story, there are different sides of the story. So side number one that I want to talk about is the result of this war that happened to the Arabs and the Palestinians, and I'm separating the two. With the Palestinians, this was what's called the Naksa, which means the setback. The 1948 war was described as the Nakba.
By them, you mean, yeah.
By them. Yeah, because another 300, because for some of them, they were removed not once, but twice. So this is 300,000 refugees emerged out of this Six-Day War. A war, by the way, that they certainly probably wanted to happen against Israel, but they weren't the primary fighters in the war. It was the Arab countries that were the fighters, right? It was Jordan, it was Egypt, it was Syria, but they were 300,000 refugees.
And where did this become refugees to?
Everywhere. Jordan, Egypt, they stay in Gaza.
Right. So dispersed everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Jerusalem also becomes a major issue. So this is all taking place. So that's one paradox.
So one paradox is that the celebration of one people is a displacement of
another people.
You're also naming of in many ways the Palestinians, they didn't initiate 67, but they become the main victims of it.
They become the main victims of it. I don't want to say the Palestinians, I don't want to give them a get out of jail free card here, Mijal. Like the reality, I just read to you before a quote from the founder of the PLO, which said that there should be extermination of all Jews.
Right.
Let's be real about this. Yeah. And we also have to be real about the fact that between 48 and 67, there were literally thousands of incursions from what's called the Fedayeen to go back to the land of Israel, what they viewed as Palestine, and to either cause damage or to wreak havoc or to engage in terrorist activities.
Yeah.
I don't want to be flippant about that.
I appreciate that.
At all. So the paradox is that there is this joint, on the one hand, major celebration. This is going to be really important, Mijal. And on the other hand, there's this major setback. I'm not getting into historically who's right or who's wrong right now. I'm just describing the reality of Palestinians and Israelis. I said that I say Hallel with a blessing on Jerusalem Day. Do you?
No.
You don't?
No, but that's a whole lot.
This is interesting. That's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah, but not that interesting.
Do you say Hallel? Do you say the Thanksgiving prayer at all on this day or no?
Yeah, but I don't have like I don't think I take it the way you do.
What? Say why? I'm interested why. Like, I haven't gotten to my paradoxical feelings yet. Right now, all I've said is I have this immense celebratory joy. And by the way, more than that, I feel like this, I feel this sense of Jewish history and Jewish heritage, this 2,000-year-old, 3,000-year-old story in such a profound way that I don't feel like in any other day. And that's why I feel like it's my responsibility to say Thanksgiving prayer to God.
Yeah, I mean, I have other layers that you don't have. Sorry. No, I don't mean it. No, I don't mean it that way.
Tell me about it. Tell me about these layers.
No, I don't.
I know. You're more complicated than me. I know.
I grew up in in a Sephardic home where we took Maimonides' as injunctions against saying blessings very seriously, and I am a woman. And there's all these other religious layers that to me complicate when I say Hallel and with a blessing and not. So
Okay.
Do you get what I'm saying? It's like not exactly.
I get it. So I want to ask a separate point then. Do you feel gratitude? Like to God?
Of course I do. The gratitude is exponential. Gratitude, first of all, Israel could have ceased to exist in 1967. Like that was like a real existential threat. And thank God, God, I do believe in God's intervention in history. So thank God we prevailed. And I love Jewish history. I love walking in the streets of Jerusalem and thinking that I am connected to my ancestors. When I'm in the Western Wall and I think about the generations of people who've prayed there and begged there, and I'm connected to them, there's something there. I don't even know if I want to call it mythical or romantic, but to me, being a human being and being a Jew in this world is a deep connection to my past. And to have access to not just stones, there's stones that were sacred to so many of my ancestors. That's amazing. And I would also say it's personal. Like my parents fell in love in Jerusalem. They got married in the old city. I can literally go to the synagogue, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. It's one of the 4 ancient Sephardic synagogues. I can go to the place where they got married. I have like a family history there. When I was a kid, some Friday nights, I recall my parents doing like these cute competitions. We had this game in which like you had to sing songs, right? And it would be like a competition about who would run out of songs first on like Jerusalem songs. You know what I mean? Wow. So like, that makes sense what I'm saying? So like,
yeah, of course it makes sense.
So I grew up with like Yerushalayim songs as part of my DNA of what it meant to be a person. And then when I got older, I fell in love with it. I did even, I remember one summer I joined like a tour guiding course of Jerusalem just because I wasn't a tour guide, but I just like paid. So they let me join. Like you're there in the epicenter of the history of your people and of the world. So I have also like my own complicated feelings.
Mijal, you and I haven't spoken about what the complications are.
Well, you started naming one complication is that there's multiple stories from multiple people. And, fair to say that. Yeah. And we also started naming before that there's some people for whom, getting all of these lands back was actually an opportunity to maybe have like a pragmatic conflict resolutions with the Palestinians. And for others, it was a way to actually work towards reestablishing Greater Israel. And there's something messianic around that. So those to me are like, they're layers. But yeah, there's also complications.
Right. And then it's the celebration of Jerusalem Day itself as well. That's where the complications really come in.
Can you explain what you mean by that now? I think I know what you mean, but flesh it out.
Okay, so there's something called the Rikud Galim, which means...
The flag dance.
Flag dance. Yeah. Flag dance.
Have you gone?
4 or 5 times.
4 or 5 times. Okay, I only went once.
This is where things get complicated, and I'm going to channel the Amos Oz inside of me, in which what he said. Amos is an amazing novelist, is an Israeli novelist, one of the, I would say, key writers of Israeli history.
And also somebody who was identified with like the dovish camp in Israel, and somebody who believed in like pragmatic compromise towards conflict resolution with Palestinians.
I'm definitely wrong here, but I don't think of him in political ways. I just love his writings.
But he was very political.
I know. That's what I'm just saying. That's like he said. One of the most powerful things that he wrote for me was when he said that Jerusalem is mine, yet a stranger to me. And what he was saying is, when you were just talking about your description of Jerusalem, even though you're from Argentina and you live in New York, but Jerusalem is yours. Like the description of Jerusalem, how you describe your family singing the songs about Yerushalayim, about Jerusalem, it's yours, and yet it's a stranger in the sense that what Amos Oz was saying is like, I got there in 1967, and people were living there, and they were strangers. He didn't understand their language, and they're living like the way they always lived, he says, and I'm the stranger. And he said their eyes hate him. And that's what I think of on the way the flag dance often works.
So just tell us, what is the flag dance? Who goes there? The
flag dance is, so on Jerusalem Day itself, on Yerushalayim itself, there's probably around 50,000 or so people. Maybe I'm exaggerating. I don't know. It may be some years less, some years more. And you march from the western part of Jerusalem, what some people call West Jerusalem, to the eastern part of Jerusalem, to what people call East Jerusalem, this is the whole unifying aspect of it, like meaning the unified city of Jerusalem. And there are probably around, I'm going to get my numbers not exactly right, but 400,000 or so Palestinian Arabs living in East Jerusalem. And, if the city has 900,000 or so people, then 400,000 or so are Palestinian Arabs. And there are different gates that allow you to get into the Kotel, to the Western Wall.
The Temple Mount.
To Temple Mount. But no one's marching there. That's not where the march is really going to. It's going to the Western Wall. And there's a gate called Shar Shechem, or in English, I think it's Damascus Gate. And then there is the Muslim quarter. And this is all under the jurisdiction, technically, of Israel. That's what it is, right? Israel won the war. And in 1980, officially made Jerusalem part of Israel formally, which was denied by the United Nations. But Israel and Israelis, and on this day, Israel is saying all of it belongs to us. And so therefore what happens is we're going to march through the Muslim quarter.
Well, Israel is not saying that. The people who are leading this flag march.
Fine, good. You're spot on. Israel might be saying it by allowing it to take place. So this group of people, tens of thousands of people, are dancing. They're celebrating Israel. I've been part of this. Am Yisrael Chai, like the Jewish people live. Like, it's amazing. Singing Jerusalem songs. Yerushalayim Shel Zahav, Jerusalem of gold. Like, amazing songs. Awesome. Except there's either a very small group of people, like some people want to say tiny group of people, maybe 1%, or some people say up to 10% of people are saying chants that I don't even want to say on this podcast, but nasty chants about Arabs. And it becomes a parade or a march that's not about celebrating Jewish sovereignty, but about something else. For those group of peoples that are coming out there and screaming these chants about antagonism towards Arabs.
So now, could we say it this way, just taking a step back for a second?
Yeah.
Because we started off by saying it's a day that is intensely kept by a small number of people. And I would add to it, it's a day that some people actually feel uncomfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah, that's right.
So could we say, let's think together, could we say that the flag march is almost like a symbol of the kind of strain of religious Zionism that some people find dangerous?
I think so.
Which is not all of it. I'm just, I'm being,
No, right. No, you're absolutely right.
Where do you go again now?
Oof. You got me wondering, Mijal.
Mm-hmm.
Probably not in this atmosphere. I feel so sad saying that out loud.
So it's almost like the holiday has become identified or taken over by a certain group.
But I won't allow that to take place. At least not in my
your
family.
Celebration. I know.
Yeah, not in my celebration. No, I will not allow that to take place. It's an incredibly profound and important day. It remains that way. And I don't think we could allow people on the fringes to identify or define really what the day should feel like. And I think we can't allow that to take place. Mijal, what I see taking place in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and this is something that's been written about extensively by people like Micha Goodman, is fear and humiliation. There's fear on the Israeli side of things. There's this intense fear of needing to feel safe, of needing to feel secure, of needing to feel like we're not going to be attacked. And on the Palestinian side of things, there's this humiliation. And 67 was the ultimate display of humiliation for the Arab leaders. And they lost, and by the way, they lost, Michal, to the Nebuchadnezzar little pitiful Jew. That's part of their story. It's part of their narrative. And they lost. And if it is the case that there's fear on the Israeli side, which is guiding them, and it is the case that there's humiliation on the side of the Arab side, from the Palestinian side, then I think it's the job of the Arab world to stop triggering the amygdala, which is that little part of the brain that senses fear and then trains the brain to say fight, flight, or freeze. The brain says, I'm going to figure this out, but I'm going to do something as a reaction to it. And that's what the Palestinians have to stop triggering the fear. And the Israelis have responsibility to stop triggering the humiliation. Humiliation comes in the form of low self-esteem, of depression, of anxiety, and those sorts of things. And Israel has to do everything in its power to not humiliate the other. There's a line from Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter was the great Musarist. He was a great leader in the, I think, 19th century, teaching people how to be more refined human beings. And he said he saw two young boys fighting. And one of those young boys threw the other young boy into a ditch. And he asked this young boy, why did you just throw him in the ditch? And he said, I wanted to show that I'm taller. I want to show that I'm bigger. So Rabbi Yisrael Salanter said, next time, just stand on a chair.
Yeah.
And to me, that's like the ultimate security, Michal, isn't it? To like not have to throw anything in the face of someone else. But tell me where I'm wrong here. If you see the story differently than me, I want to understand it better from you. You have a lot of like sharp wisdom in this area.
I don't know if I have sharp wisdom.
You do.
I have cynicism, though.
You do.
I'm very
okay.
Like in the post-October 7th reality, Palestinians need to stop triggering our fear. I'm like, who are you sending this memo to? You know what I mean? Really? To Palestinians, to Iran, to their supporters around the West. And the worst thing is that this sick cycle reinforces each other. The more that the fear is triggered, the more that elements that seek to humiliate become stronger. And that's part of the tragedy. But yeah, I will say also that, but there's another part of this. You spoke about fear, about humiliation, about national conflict. But to me, Jerusalem also represents, God and religion. And that's like, I think a lot of observers of Israel and the conflict and Jerusalem don't really get that. Like, I don't think, unless you've tasted the intoxication of believing with all of your might in the Messiah, and that you can bring it, and that it might come to life in front of you, and that it will redeem the world. Unless you've had a little bit of that
Kool-Aid.
No, Kool-Aid is it's, sorry to say, but it's a little bit condescending to those who have it. Sorry. No, it's. I
like when people drink the Wandering Jews Kool-Aid.
Okay.
So that's why.
I don't know, but there's something there that I understand innately, and that I find both beautiful and magnificent and dangerous. Because any kind of intoxication can lead you to do great things for good and for bad. And part of what happens here is that you've got this city, this magnificent city that has been yearned for and dreamed of and prayed for by people whose one people's dream is the other's nightmare, and vice versa. And that's part of the story of Jerusalem. And I think for me, I'm in a place where I love this city so much.
Yep.
And I'm also constantly toggling between the Jerusalem of my dreams and what I think of. There's a statement by the rabbis of Yerushalayim shel Mala, Yerushalayim shel Mata, the Jerusalem of the celestial heavens and the one of the earthy, the real one, the lived one. And I think that sometimes our intoxication with the celestial one can lead us to do things to make the lived reality harder. And I'm nervous. I think that sometimes we become intoxicated by stones and not enough by people. And there's something, that's to me the question. And I don't want to do it in a way that dismisses the dreams and the yearnings and the songs and the way that Jerusalem, Jerusalem makes my heart sing like no other place in the world. Every wedding we go to, a Jewish wedding, you're celebrating, you're happy, you're joyous. And we end that chuppah ceremony shattering a glass and proclaiming out loud, we will raise up Jerusalem even in our happiest moments. And that's been said for generations and generations and generations. And that's part of what makes us a people. So I go into Yom Yerushalayim being very grateful that we're saved from a tragedy, being grateful that we have access to holy sites. And also just saying that we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do in how to insist that we get to celebrate, but celebrate in a way that hopefully make things better for a lot of people. And also a special responsibility for us, Noam, those of us who, I think both of us probably would have a lot to say about the term religious Zionism, and we didn't really do that today, but
no,
I think,
we'll get there.
But I think we identify as religious people and as Zionists, right? Let's just put it like that. And I think we have a lot of work to do to try to figure out, how we not let what we think of as extremists, I'm not saying they would agree with that, right, but take over the celebration of an important day.
Right. And Michal, you that was incredibly, that was helpful for me. That was helpful for me because what you just did for me is you helped make Jerusalem Day, which is such a powerful day. I said it's one of the most meaningful days for me personally because it's at the intersection of two identities, the religion and the Zionism coming together. And it's become a day that's been complicated over the years. But something that you did is you made it again, in hearing your words at the end there, a very spiritual day. And that's, I think, why my heart yearns for it. In the same way that your heart sings, my heart has this yearning for feeling this healthy Jewish identity that I think is so critical for people like Natan Sharansky, who pointed out that in June 1967, when he heard the phrase, the Temple Mount is in our hands, when he heard that, he said it penetrated the Iron Curtain and it gave him and millions of others a meaningful identity. And so that's what 67 does for me. It gives me this meaningful identity. And I hope that it does do what people like Rabbi Lookstein described in New York in 1967, when he said that people no longer were walking around like question marks, like in a hunched way, but standing straight up like exclamation points. That also really matters. So, that's the story of 67. That's the story of Jerusalem Day. And it's a complicated one, but a beautiful one. So, Mijal, thank you so much for having this conversation with me.
Thank you, Noam, and happy Yom Yerushalayim. Happy Jerusalem Day.
To you as well.
Wandering Jews is a production of Unpacked, a division of OpenDor Media. Subscribe to Wandering Jews wherever you're listening to this pod, and follow Unpacked at all the social media places. Just look for @JewishUnpacked. And most of all, be in touch. Write to us at wanderingjews@jewishunpacked.com. This episode was hosted by Michal Biton and Noam Weissman. Audio was edited by Rob Pera, and were produced by Rivki Stern.